Welcome to our deep dive into two fascinating works that you've probably been exploring, the Law of One and the Conversations with God series. You've been grappling with concepts like consciousness and creation and the nature of reality, and we're here to kind of help you synthesize it all.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And what's really fascinating about this deep dive is the nature of the source material.
Yeah.
So you have the Law of One, which is channeled material from this entity called Ra.
Oh, wait.
And then you have Conversations with God, which is presented as a direct dialogue with God.
Right. Yeah. It's like getting two very different perspectives on the same questions.
Exactly.
So where do we even begin with all this?
Well, let's start with the Law of One.
Okay.
This material claims to be a transmission from Ra,
Mm-hmm.
a sixth density social memory complex.
Okay. Now that sounds kind of sci-fi to me. What is a sixth density social memory complex?
So essentially, you can think of it as a collective of souls merged into one entity.
So like a hive mind kind of?
Yeah, a collective consciousness on a grand scale.
Yeah. Okay, got it. And this Raw, they claim to have communicated with humans before.
Exactly. Ra suggests they visited Earth thousands of years ago,
Wow.
interacting with civilizations like the ancient Egyptians.
Okay.
In fact, they suggest their influence can be seen in some of the Egyptian teachings and symbolism.
Oh, wow. So they weren't just popping in for a quick hello.
Yeah?
They had a purpose.
Yeah.
What were they trying to teach humanity?
They came to enunciate the Law of One,
Okay.
which is this principle that revolves around unity, and it seeks to resolve the paradoxes that we perceive in our existence.
Okay, so like a universal law that brings healing and understanding.
Exactly.
But how does that play out in a universe where we have free will? Doesn't that inherently create separation and different paths?
That's where it gets really interesting. Ra emphasizes that the purpose of the universe is for the creator to know itself.
Okay.
And the first distortion of the Law of One, the mechanism that allows this to happen, is free will.
Okay.
It's this principle of choice that creates an infinite variety of experiences for souls to explore.
So it's like each choice creates a ripple effect, shaping not just our individual journey, but the evolution of consciousness as a whole.
Precisely.
Wow.
And to understand this evolution, Ra introduces the concept of densities.
Densities.
Think of them as stages of spiritual evolution.
Okay.
Each density represents a different level of awareness and understanding.
So like levels in a video game.
Exactly.
Okay.
And we're currently on Earth, which Ra suggests is transitioning from third to fourth density.
Okay, so from one level to the next. What does that even mean in practical terms? What does that look like?
So think of it as a shift in consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Third density is characterized by self-awareness and the development of individuality.
Okay.
Fourth density is all about moving from a focus on the self to a focus on others, a state of love and understanding.
Well, humanity's in the midst of a major level up.
Exactly.
Gotcha. And Ra even mentions these beings called wanderers, beings from higher densities who have incarnated on Earth to help us through this transition.
That's right. Imagine souls choosing to descend into a denser reality for the purpose of serving and assisting in this evolutionary shift.
But if they're from higher densities, wouldn't they remember their purpose and where they came from?
Well, that's the catch. They undergo the same veiling process as any other soul entering third density.
Mm-hmm.
This means they forget their origins and their mission. It's like they're starting a new game with a foggy memory of the previous one.
So they just have this kind of nagging feeling that they're supposed to be doing something, but they don't know what it is.
Exactly. It can lead to feelings of frustration, confusion, even isolation.
Yeah, you're not wrong there.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder, how can we even recognize our own potential or purpose within all of this?
That's a question many people grapple with.
For sure.
And it's something that we'll continue to explore as we delve deeper into these texts.
Yeah.
But before we do, it's important to note that Ra also mentions another group, the Orion group.
Okay, who are they?
So Rin describes them as a contrasting force representing a service to self-orientation. So imagine them as beings who see the universe as a game of power and control, who seek to influence others towards separation and self-aggrandizement.
So it's like a cosmic tug of war between service to others and service to self.
Precisely.
Two different paths with vastly different goals.
Exactly.
Okay.
And this sets the stage for a deeper exploration of free will choice and the role each of us plays in the evolution of consciousness. But for now, let's move on to the second work that you've been exploring, Conversations with God.
Okay, so we've got this cosmic backdrop of densities and wanderers and this Orion group. It's a lot to take in. But now we're shifting gears to conversations with God, which seems to take a more personal approach. What stood out to you about this work?
What I find really fascinating is just how direct the dialogue is. It's like God is speaking directly to the reader, addressing them personally, offering insights in very conversational tone.
Yeah, it's not this distant authoritarian voice. It feels more intimate.
Exactly. And one of the core messages that really shines through is this emphasis on the power of choice. God emphasizes that we have the ability to shape our reality through our intentions and our decisions.
So it's aligning with the law of one's emphasis on free will.
Yeah.
We're not just puppets on a string. We're active participants in our lives.
And God even takes it a step further, saying, I want for you what you want for yourself.
Wow, that's powerful.
It's like a cosmic mirror reflecting back our deepest desires.
Yeah, it's like the universe is conspiring with us to create the reality we choose.
And this leads to some really thought-provoking insights.
Yeah.
God delves into the nature of suffering,
Okay.
suggesting that it's often an illusion that we create through our perceptions and beliefs.
So it's not that suffering doesn't exist, but we have the power to choose how we relate to it.
Exactly. And God also talks about this idea of looking at and seeing through illusions.
Okay.
Which I think is so relevant today, where we're constantly bombarded with information and narratives.
Yeah, it's like we have to become discerning observers, not just accepting everything we see or hear.
Right. It's about cultivating that ability to question, to look beneath the surface. And this ties into this idea that life proceeds out of our intentions.
So it's like what we focus on expands.
Exactly. Our thoughts, beliefs, intentions act as magnets, drawing experiences and circumstances into our lives.
So we're not just victims of fate. We're co-creating our reality with the divine.
That's a powerful way to put it.
And it brings a whole new level of responsibility to our choices.
Exactly.
Speaking of responsibility, I have to ask about God's explanation of heaven and hell. It's not the fire and brimstone scenario many of us grew up with.
No, it's not. God presents heaven and hell not as literal places,
Okay.
but as the natural consequences of our choices and our thought patterns.
So it's not about punishment or reward.
Yeah.
It's more like a feedback system.
Exactly. If we consistently choose thoughts and actions that are aligned with love, compassion, understanding, we create a heavenly experience.
Yeah.
Conversely, if we dwell in fear, anger, separation, we create a hellish reality.
It's like we reap what we sow, but on a spiritual and energetic level.
And this brings us to one of God's statements, I am what I am, and I am what I am not.
It's a bit mind-bending, isn't it?
It is. It's like a paradox.
Well, it points to what's called the divine dichotomy.
Okay.
It suggests that the Creator, in its desire to know itself fully, must also know all that it is not.
So darkness is necessary to understand light. Separation is necessary to understand unity.
Exactly. It's a dance of opposites.
And this connects back to the law of one and the concept of polarity. Remember the Orion group? They represent that service to self polarity,
Exactly.
which seems to be the opposite of Ra's service to others orientation.
Right.
So even this seemingly negative force plays a role in the creator's self-exploration.
That's the implication. It suggests that even what we perceive as negative or undesirable has its place in the grand scheme of things.
Wow. Okay. So we've got these two seemingly different works, but they're pointing towards similar truths using different language and metaphors.
And that's where it gets even more interesting. How do we synthesize these teachings? What does it all mean for us? Yeah, it really is a lot to process. We've gone from sixth density beings to conversations with God explored densities.
What?
Wanderers even touched upon the nature of good and evil. It's a lot.
It is. And yet, despite all of that, there's a common thread that runs through these works.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
The interconnectedness of all things.
Right. Like we're not isolated individuals. We're part of a larger web of consciousness.
Exactly. And if we connect this back to the big picture,
Mm-hmm.
this interconnectedness highlights the significance of our choices and our actions.
Okay.
Both Ra and God suggest that we are, in essence, creators of our reality.
Okay, so we're not just passengers on this cosmic ride. We're co-piloting the ship.
Exactly.
But if we're creating our reality, why is there so much suffering and chaos in the world?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And while neither Ra nor God offers a simple answer, they both point towards the power of free will.
Okay.
It's through our choices, both individually and collectively, that we shape the world around us.
So if we're seeing a lot of negativity and suffering, it's a reflection of the choices being made by humanity as a whole.
It's one way to look at it. Remember the concept of densities? Ra suggests that Earth is currently transitioning from third to fourth density,
Okay.
a stage marked by a shift from self-focus to a focus on love and understanding.
So maybe this turmoil is part of the growing pains.
Mm.
We're shedding old patterns and beliefs that no longer serve us.
That's a possibility. And this is where the concept of wanderers comes in.
Right.
Souls from higher densities who have incarnated on Earth to help with this transition.
So some of us listening might actually be wanderers ourselves here to assist humanity in its evolution.
It's a mind-blowing thought.
It really is. So how do we tap into that inner wanderer, that desire to serve and make the world a better place?
Well, both Ra and God emphasize the importance of aligning our intentions with the greater good.
Hmm.
Ra talks about the path of service to others as a way to evolve spiritually, while God suggests that serving others is ultimately serving ourselves.
So it all comes back to that interconnectedness. When we help others, we help ourselves.
Exactly. It's like a rising tide lifts all boats.
I like that. So how can our listeners apply these principles in their own lives?
Well, think about the choices you make every day. What intentions are you setting? Are they aligned with the law of one, with this understanding of interconnectedness and co-creation?
It's a powerful invitation to be more mindful of the impact we have on the world.
Exactly.
Wow, this has been an incredible deep dive. We've explored some really profound concepts.
We have.
And I think the biggest takeaway for me is this. We have the power to choose, to create, to evolve.
And that's a really empowering message.
It is. It's an invitation to step into our roles as conscious creators,
Exactly.
to live with intention, and to contribute to the evolution of consciousness.
Beautiful.
So as you go about your day, remember to ask yourself, what reality are you choosing to create? What seeds of intention are you planting? And how can you be a force for good in the world?
That's a great question to ponder.
It is. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. It's been a pleasure exploring these ideas with you.
It has been a pleasure. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep creating the reality you desire.